Steve, you grew up in Ashington in Northumberland. What kind of place is that?
Former mining town, very working class area with good people.
Didn't the Charltons grow up there?
Yes, the Charltons.
Wow.
Bobby and Jackie. I still see Jackie every now and again on a Friday at the local golf club. He comes in every now and again. Obviously, Jackie Milburn as well, who was related to the Charlton family, and a new Ashes hero in Mark Wood.
Of course, Mark Wood's from up there as well. We'll talk about Mark a little later on. And what's your childhood like?
Very good. I was one of 5 children. I had a stepbrother, and obviously there was 4 of us lived in from my mum and dad that I was brought up with. We had I was the oldest of 4, younger brother James, younger sister Joanne, younger brother Ben, who played cricket for Durham and now plays for Kent, and then, like I said before, my stepbrother Darren, who's a little bit older than me.
Do you still support your brother now that he's become a traitor and moved to Kent?
No, I still support him. Yeah, he's playing with he actually plays alongside one of my best mates. So Rob Key, who is a big friend of TalkSport, he's
never off, is he?
He's never off. No. He's never off TalkSport and he's never off Sky, but he's better. He's got a great face for radio, so he's perfect for it.
That's perfectly fair. Now, the thing is, Steve, for somebody who goes on to become a top international cricketer, you actually grew up in a football household.
I did, yes, very much so. Yeah,
your dad Jimmy was a player and a manager.
Yeah, he played for the local sides. We went down to Yeovil. I could have been a Somerset boy if it had worked out. He went down to Yeovil when I was 18 months.
This is to play the game,
yeah? To play the game, yeah. He played a couple of years down there, and then obviously we moved back. A little bit of homesickness, but also another opportunity up north that went that way. So they moved back north, and I was born and brought up, as well as my other brothers, in and around non-league football, because Dad played a lot of non-league football up until he was about 44, 45. So from that point of view, we were around a non-league dressing room a hell of a lot. Hence why I moved into that. You
yourself, as you were growing up, you're obviously very good at both cricket and football, because you're on you're at the School of Excellence with Newcastle while making your way through the representative sides at cricket as well. How did this happen?
Yeah, well, obviously football was always something I was more interested in than the cricket. I always finished the football season, started the football season, so I missed the sort of start and end of any sort of cricket season up to about 15, 16-year-old. I played senior football at a young age. As soon as I was 16th birthday, I started playing with men, which I thought helped me. But as a junior, I was at the School of Excellence, and everybody, when you hear people say I was at Newcastle this, or I was at such and such club when I was a kid, that means nothing. To be fair, I think out of two big groups of the age groups I was in around, I think there's only one player that stayed on at Newcastle out of about 30 odd players. So, and that was the first time I'd met John Carver, who last year was a Newcastle manager. He was Sir Bobby Robson's assistant manager, which came in, later on we'll talk about when we were in the Caribbean, how I became trainer with Newcastle, and it came through John. I first met John at 9-year-old. And
how good were you at football, and what position did you play?
I was always a defender. I couldn't catch many, but I could kick everybody. So that was the thing that I was always better at. But it became quite apparent when I got to 15, 16 that the slower I was at football, the faster I was playing cricket. So
you were lucky as well then, because I know that Jeff Cook, who was when he played for Northumberland, spotted you. You joined up with Durham's under-16s and signed for the county academy a few weeks later. And next here on My Sporting Life, we'll look at your early years playing cricket and your progress into the Durham first 11, which led to making your England Test debut. Steve, given all that, you quickly made your mark in first-class cricket with Durham, and signed up with them, making your debut in 1996. They hadn't long been in the county championship, I think only 4 years at that stage. What kind of a place was it to play your cricket, Durham?
It was, I loved it. I loved playing at Chester Street. It's a fantastic place. When we first went in there, we were rightly, we were a young side. The gone are the days of the Botham, the Jones, the Larkins and all that established the county from 92 to then in 96. when I first went in, we were a very, very young side. We weren't very good, let's be fair. Teams were coming up for 2 days and not for 4 because we were getting rolled over. But then we signed somebody who, for me, changed the face of cricket in the North East, and that was David Boone. He made us more steelier, determination, the professionalism that he brought. I think just moved us onto a different level. We stood still again for a couple of years, and then when sort of Mike Hussey and Dale Benkenstein took the club on, we started getting better and better, and that concrete foundation is what has built Durham's legacy on now.
Yeah, and of course now it's one of the top counties, and more importantly, keeps turning out England cricketers, which is one of the things I think the counties are there for. You were quickly to the attention, I think it's fair to say, of you made a mark in the county game, but also in the way that sometimes happens, the national selector starts to take notice of you, and you went with the ECB National Academy team to Australia in the winter of 2001-2002. That was very important. I mean, there were some top players in that team. Andrew Strauss went, Ian Bell, your friend, as you mentioned there, Rob Key.
Yeah, it was an interesting trip, that one. I got picked in 2000 for England at Lords and then at Trent Bridge and at Edgbaston. Didn't play in the squad there, and then I got pushed into the academy the following year to Australia. I didn't enjoy. I must admit, I didn't enjoy it.
Why is that, Steve?
It was a bit school. We were maybe guinea pigs for that first trip over to Australia, and I thought it was probably right for under-19s to go down that road, not sort of men who had played first-class cricket for the best part of 4 or 5 years. I don't think Rod Marsh really understood what was actually happening, to the extent that we took a lot of backroom staff, and the backroom staff that were there that had to do their jobs, where Rod was in his own back garden. He'd pop in for his little session and then he'd pop home, where we were doing 10 hours a day in this big brother house. And after about 7 weeks of the first trip, we come home for Christmas, and I honestly, John Abrahams arguably saved my career by staying back, and I refused to go back. I couldn't go back. I thought, I've got a house, I've got a mortgage with kids, and I'm playing professional cricket for Durham and playing well, and I'm getting treated like a school kid here. And some of the fitness side of the stuff, and we were getting taught life skills, and I was thinking, well, life skills not going to do me any good against Ricky Ponting or Matthew Hayden or Justin Langer next year when we go to Australia. And life skills isn't really going to help me forge too much in my professional cricket career, as well as teaching me things that I'm not saying that I wouldn't say I already knew, but like I said before, I had children at the time, and I was thinking, what am I doing in this place? And
it's interesting, Steve, because you have, of course, you're very young, but you already have a family. Do you think that? It's quite. You have to be quite strong-headed to decide I'm not going back there.
Yeah, I did, and I was. The one thing I've always done, Danny, was back everything I did with the cricket ball. I forget anything else. I was probably my own worst enemy sometimes, that I was too stubborn for my own good, but I backed what I could do and my ability to do my job properly. Whether I did it and whether I didn't, people will judge. People will say it about me that did I fulfill my potential? Does anybody fulfill their potential? A handful, and they're normally classed as greats. For me, I felt as though I gave everything I possibly could every time I went out and played, and I always backed the thing that I felt as though I could do properly, and that was to bowl cricket balls. I wasn't a massive one on the gym, but I never shirked my responsibility in bowling. I always felt as though a fast bowler, the best way a fast bowler could get fit was bowling.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you could get fit, because no matter how many weights or how many jumps or how many of these things you can, round ladders or anything you can do, at the end of the day, bowling is a unique art.
I was going to say, there's nothing else like it really in the sporting world, particularly bowling quickly, running up from a huge distance, turning your body through that pivot. There isn't really a training that can get you ready for it. Let me ask you then, Steve, there was a time when you weren't in the England team and you do make your debut. I remember, though, Ian Botham, I wonder if you're aware of this, Ian Botham, every time he was asked about England's bowling attack before you got into the team, he would say, I think this lad in Durham is good, and your name was being bandied about, particularly by Ian Botham, a lot.
Yeah, well, no, that might be a northern thing. You hear Sir Ian talk about.
Well, because he played for Durham, didn't he? So he kind of watched out for it, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. But whenever you hear Sir Ian talk about northern lads, he always talks about the good northern boys. He's got a soft spot for the northeast. Yeah, look, I'll probably do the same with kids. And when I commentate that, if I see that I feel as though they should be playing, I'll back my own eyes and judgments that I feel as though it's not a case they should be playing, but it's a case of we should be looking at these things. But on that front, obviously I was very fortunate that I had somebody like that in my corner, chomping the sort of Harmison case. But when it comes down to it, I ended up going back. I did end up going back to the academy. I dislocated my shoulder after about 3 weeks. I came back, got through the sort of rehab program, started the season well, and eventually got on the England team, which was pleasing. And to make your debut, no matter where you play in the world or wherever you play, whatever ground it is, it's always special when you play that first time. And I made my debut with two of my best mates, so the more the special.
Rob Key and who else?
Rob Key and Andrew Flintoff, which was.
Are you all three started together? It was in Trent Bridge against India, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, Andrew started before that, but he was in the team when we played, and obviously me, Keezy, and Andrew, we played under 19 cricket together. So we came together, and the debut was quite amusing because you get to the picture stage where the captain, the chairman of selectors, stands with the debutant, gives him a cap, and Nasser Hussain walks up, throws his cap at me and says, "Well done, Durham," throws it at Keezy and says, "Well done, Kent," and off he popped. And that was Nasser's way of being a little bit of Essex humour. So
yes.
It's not really got any better, to be fair.
No, not much ceremony at all there. You played that one game against India, and then you went to Australia, as you said, in the winter of 2002-2003. It was not a good tour for England. They got walloped in the series 4-1. Won the last test in Sydney. I think you played the last 4 of the 5 tests. But at the start of it, Steve, you'll remember. You know what I'm going to say now, don't you? Against the chairman's 11 at Lilac Hill, you bowled 7 consecutive wides.
I did. And honestly, Danny, I can't remember any of it. It was crazy. Honestly, it's not an excuse because later on in my career, I bowled more than my own fair share of wides,
including the most famous wide in the history of cricket. Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm probably remembered for bowling one ball. I think in my first class career, I bowled something like 60,000 cricket balls, and I'm remembered for that one. But
we will talk about it, Steve. But there are other ones I want to talk about as well. Trust me.
But the Lilac Hill one was quite amusing. The role you had at Lilac Hill, first game of the tour, and it's against probably the ear side with about 2 or 3 veterans in. So if you beat them, the 2 or 3 veterans that haven't played for maybe 5 or 6 years, they can say, well, you're just playing against young lads and a couple of old men.
Yeah.
They do it very, very well. There's about 15,000 people there crammed into this little ground. And right round the boundary's edge where the rope is, there was loads of school kids, and I've been hit, the ball's been hit down through the field, and I've gone chasing after it, and I'm now going to dive to pull it back feet first, and then I'm realizing I'm going into these kids studs up, so I've had to change my mind and go sort of face first. I've gone to pull it back, and I've ended up in a massive heap. Fast bowlers should not dive, and I've ended up banging my head off the sort of rope and the floor, and I've got no idea what's going on and where I am. So I have a couple of overs off, and then when I came back onto the field, I'm still a bit groggy, but I'm 22 year old. I'm wanting to play for England and showing everybody what I can do, and it was just one of them moments that it didn't happen. So it's life. I wouldn't change the decision to go back on the field because I was desperate to play cricket for England.
You played in 4 of the 5 tests. It was one of those series down under which didn't go so well. Australia won in Adelaide, Perth. Well, they won the first 4. Can you remember, A, what did it feel like? And B, could you imagine that within a few years, England would actually be able to beat this great Australian team?
I loved it. Danny, I loved it. It was brilliant. Now, the part I didn't love, I carried Simon Jones off in Brisbane. I was on the front end of the stretcher when he got carried off, and there was somebody threw a Coke can at him. I actually nearly dropped Simon because I was going in to sort this bloke out.
A good man.
I was literally carrying him off, and somebody threw a can at him, which was totally disrespectful. But that's life. And I remember thinking once he had gone off, I've got a chance to play in these next 4 games. And you look down that team, Langer, Hayden, Ponting, Martin, and Steve Vaught,
Gillespie, Lee.
I've missed somebody out there.
Boone.
Yeah, it was ridiculous the side. Yeah, it's ridiculous the side. And I thought, well, the first initial thought was, if you can do all right against these lot, you can play against anybody in the world, and you can play anywhere in the world. And I felt, I didn't take the volume of wickets I would like. I think to about 9 or 10 wickets in the 4 Test matches, but I felt as though I left Australia people saying good things about me, which was always good. One of the big moments at the end. Whatever happens on the field, people can see. There's however many thousand people in the ground, millions of people watching on the TV, the things that you don't see behind the scenes. And it was, I remember going and sat in a dressing room, and a few of my teammates didn't want to go into the Australian dressing room. And I went in with Rob Key, Mark Butcher, James Foster, I think John Crawley was there, Michael Vaughan was there. And we went in and we had a beer. And we had more than one, I must admit, sitting after we won in Sydney. But I sat in that dressing room, and at one point in the afternoon, I'm sitting next to Brett Lee, Steve Vaughan, Glenn McGrath, and I'm 24-year-old from Asherton, and I'm thinking, you know what? Yeah, this is the best education I could possibly get. I couldn't have had it any better, talking to these great players, and they're going down as great players, and I'm in this company. That for me give me a hell of a lot of confidence that I can actually perform at this level. And when we go on and we talk about the Ashes in 2005, I don't buy for 1 minute that we were too friendly. I just thought we won the key battles.
We talked about the Ashes, the unsuccessful Ashes tour in Australia and the World Cup in which you didn't play. There was a tour to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka in the winter 2003-04. What do you remember about that?
The Bangladesh one went really. Part of it went well. We were actually, talking in the previous section about, things that people don't see. We had a massive stroke of luck in Bangladesh. We got to Dhaka. We were there for 6 weeks. And the minute we got there was a guy coming to the team room. We just sort of arrived, and everybody's a bit tired. And this guy, who was a Scottish chef who was on work placement, actually in the hotel, said, "Look, lads, if anything you want, anything, I'm in charge here. Just give me a buzz, and I'll sort you out some sort of decent food," because you're always worried on them tours,
sure,
what you're eating, and there's a sort of whether the hygiene and whether the deli belly and all that. And for 6 weeks he looked after us brilliantly, and that was a fantastic stroke of luck when it comes to that, because you always felt a bit more confident in what you were eating, which then we were putting fuel in your body, especially when you were taking a hell of a lot out in the conditions that the subcontinent does give you.
Well, you got 9 wickets in the game against Bangladesh, 9 for 79, incredible. And then a slight injury in your back forced you to miss the test against Sri Lanka. So let's move on to, because you'll forgive me if you've had a long, distinguished career. But we are heading towards 2005. We all know what we're going to talk about one stage in this programme, and hopefully for quite a long time. There's 3 series coming up now: the tour away to the West Indies, at home to New Zealand, then home to the West Indies. But I think it's the one away in the West Indies where we first start to see really that without being immodest, you can say Steve Harmison becomes a proper Test bowler, and B, one of the great bowlers in the world.
Yeah, I did, yes, but I think to go back a little bit, Danny, that Bangladesh trip, there was more to meet the eye of what came from that Bangladesh trip. There's sort of meat on the bones, which got me to the West Indies, where there's a lot of water gone under the bridge in between there. The Bangladesh got 9 wickets in Dhaka, came off in the game in Dhaka was a wet outfield. We probably shouldn't have started the Test match. That helicopters trying to dry the outfield, rock hard pitch, and for somebody who has got a bit of a sort of stiff back and a suspect back, it was a lot of toll on it. So I missed the Chittagong game, missed the one days, had to go home. There was a lot of media people writing me off and saying that I didn't want to tour. There was a couple of teammates I do remember, were sort of talked about that, maybe were in the press saying that my heart was not in touring and my heart was not in playing for England. All this was written while the boys were in Sri Lanka.
Let's go back to the West Indies. What happened in that first test in Sabina Park, where I think you established yourself as what we're going to talk about in the course of the rest of this programme. People talk about the decline in West Indies bowling, the fast bowling. I understand that. But if you look at the team you were playing against in Jamaica, you couldn't argue that their batting had declined much. The team that you played against included Brian Lara, Chris Gale, and Shivnarine Chanderpaul. Arguably, in different ways, three of the greatest batsmen the West Indies have ever produced. And yet, as you know, you took 7 wickets in that second innings for 12 runs. What do you remember about that?
Well, what I remember about that series is we went into the series, working really, really hard. Michael Vaughan had the team, there was a new fitness sort of drive to work hard. And we had to be fit and strong and to sort of take on, which was the heat, the conditions, as well as a very, very, you met the names you mentioned, a good West Indies side. We go into that first Test match playing some half decent cricket, but maybe he's not a side with masses of confidence. And then we got into a position where we were slightly in front when it come to the end of the sort of first innings. Mm-hmm. And then on the wicket, I felt the wicket in the first innings didn't suit me because it bounced too much. I literally had to bowl.
Weird.
It is, yeah, it was, and it was literally too bouncy for somebody like myself, because even I had to bowl really, really full to get it to be challenging, and that sometimes is hard for a fast bowler, especially a tall one, because he doesn't bowl into the pitch, he floats it, and they're obviously easier to hit. So I felt as though the wicket calmed down a little bit in the second innings. And when you have these spells, and we're sitting here and we've just seen England win the Ashes and Stuart Broad getting 8 for at Trent Bridge, you need an element of luck. You need catches to be took. Chris Gale was taken by Graham Thorpe at third slip. And Thorpe, if there was a good gust of wind at the same time Thorpe's feet came off the floor, he would end up in the sort of in the Carib stand about 10 rows back on the bank, and with all the Barmy Army, because it just took him off his feet. Chanderpaul, you mentioned Chanderpaul. He blocked one onto his back pad, hit his foot, and rolled onto the stump. So
you need a bit of luck.
You need that little bit of luck. But during that spell, it's probably the only time in my career where you feel, you know what, every time I let go of this ball, I look like getting a wicket, or I'm going to get a wicket. And Michael Vaughan, everybody goes on about this field that Michael Vaughan set. And I've talked about it ages, and then you talk about it in the after dinner and stuff like that. Michael Vaughan was a great captain for the simple fact is he couldn't catch. He had the worst pair of hands ever in the game of cricket for a top 6 batsman. That's why he was good, because he fielded mid on and mid off. And if you watch him during that, we had 7 or 8 slips, and the umbrella, and Michael Vaughan is standing behind Simon Jones and Matthew Hoggard, 2 fast bowlers, and Vaughan is more or less standing behind them as to say, I don't want this ball to come to me because I'm not going to catch it. But it just got us off to a great start, and a start that continued all the way through to 2005 on.
Steve, absolutely, this is the sign of the England team starting to puff itself up as it improve, but also I think that spell at Sabina Park marks your arrival as a truly great world-class bowler. Just to remind people, that after that you went on, and England won 2 more tests in the West Indies against New Zealand. There was a 3-test series here in the summer. You took 8 wickets at Lords, 7 at Headingley, 6 in the 3rd test at Trent Bridge. Then the West Indies came over here again, and 2 things happened. You do very, very well against them as well, and you become number 1 in the world bowling rankings. But I think even more of an indication was that no less a man than Brian Lara, perhaps getting a little bit fed up with getting beaten by England, in an interview said, England, they've got Steve Harmison, but no plan B. That was an incredible compliment.
Yeah, well, that's obviously nice to hear from somebody like one of the world's greatest, and it is nice. But I think we did have a plan B. I thought we had a fantastic bowling unit.
Yourself,
all of us.
Yep.
Jones, Flintoff, Hoggard, Giles was so key to us as well. Anderson was coming into the team. So we had a fantastic unit there that on any given day, on any given surface, we could take anybody on the world on, and we proved that. And we talk about the momentum that give us. We won 7 test matches that summer.
In 2004, Steve, you took 67 wickets in 13 games at an average of 23. I mean, did you feel like, when you became, in the rankings, the world's number 1 bowler, did you feel like the best bowler in the world? I felt as though as a team, as a unit, we were the best team in the world at the time. And I think sometimes when you have a team like that, you need figureheads that are playing very,
very, very well. I think if you fast forward a few years later, we were doing well, but we weren't doing ourselves as justice. And Kevin Peterson was the best player in the world at the time, and he was doing that for England. So I felt as though I was leading a good attack. But like I said before, it's not a one-man team. It's not a one-man bowling attack. You know, if one man's looking good at one end, he needs pressure at the other end, and I think that's the most important thing for any team, and any lesson to any team coming up. If you want to build, you've got to make sure that if you've got somebody who is on a crest of a wave, you've got to make sure you back that person up, and I think that's what happened with England at that time. You know, Flintoff, Jones, Hoggard, you know, Giles especially as well. You know, we go on about a 4-man attack. It wasn't. It was a 5-man attack.
Steve, we're going to talk about 2005 now. It's one of those weird things where everybody knows the script, everyone has talked about it a million times, and yet there's always something new and fascinating to find out about it. I'll just say that you've been to South Africa prior to that. Now, you personally hadn't done particularly well, but the big battle was yet to come, and that was this Ashes series in 2005. We now look back on the England team. I just want to set this up by saying, you know, the names in the England team, yourself, Vaughan, Anderson was coming in through, as you say, but Flintoff, Giles, Matthew Hoggard, Peterson, Strauss, Trescothick, they have become synonymous with the legendary, what went on that summer. But I'm just looking at the Australian squad, just to remind people that the squad of players that England beat in this fantastic Test series, which you could argue re-cemented the place of Test cricket in the nation, included Ricky Ponting, Adam Gilchrist, Michael Clarke, Jason Gillespie, Matthew Hayden, Justin Langer, Brett Lee, Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, and others. I mean, when you lost that first Test, Steve, what was the feeling in the camp? Because this was the greatest cricket team, arguably, along with the West Indian team of the 80s, that God ever put shoes on. Yeah,
for me, I think it was the best team I've in my lifetime, I thought. They were a fantastic cricket team to watch and to play against. And when you go into the summer, you know, we come off the back of South Africa, where we won first team to win in South Africa after apartheid, going back to the sort of summer we've talked about, and then we come into the one days. You know, we set a little bit of a benchmark down in the one days that we were not going to roll over. We were going to stand there and compete with them and give them as much as they were giving us, as well as they've given every other cricket team all around the world for the last 12, 15 years. And we were gonna sort of stand up to them. What we didn't do is we didn't stand up to them probably as a batting unit at Lords, as a bowling unit, and that's what made me leave Lords thinking that we could beat these. We can get 20 wickets. You did well yourself. I think you got 8 wickets at Lords, didn't you? Yeah, that was my best Test of the summer. Yeah. So, yeah, I felt as though, but I felt not just because of that. I felt this group of 5 bowlers, we can get 20 wickets. The problem is, can we get 20 wickets, cheaper than what they're going to get 20 wickets with? They're going to get them. Yeah, Brett Lee bowled like a champion all that summer. Brett was a fantastic competitor, and as well with the ball, as well with the bat, as well as Shane Warne did. Yeah. Glenn McGrath was the same, and they were probably let down a little bit by their sort of 4th and 5th bowler. Jason Gillespie struggled a little bit, as well did Sean Tate and Michael Kastrovic, and I think that's where we had maybe the one up on them when it comes to bowling attacks. But it was the batting that was going to win us the series, because the batting had to score at a certain run rate to really sort of put us in a game winning position for our bowlers to take 20 wickets, and that's what happened at Edgbaston. McGrath famously stood on a cricket ball, twisted his ankle. The series has gone down as being one of tremendous sportsmanship. The image of Flintoff stood over the vanquished Lee is burnt into the national consciousness, but it wasn't all sporting, was it? I read somewhere that when you heard that Lee had twisted his ankle, you were kind of delighted. Oh, we were delighted. I'll tell you what. When professional sportsmen do say, you don't wish injury on a fellow professional, and you don't, not a serious one, but
no.
A little twist of an ankle and
take
off
him
to
out
hospital.
for say 6 weeks. That'd be ideal, wouldn't it?
Well, 5 days was going to be a bonus for us, because what he did to us at Lords was ridiculous. I got 5 for on the first morning of Lords, and everything was cock a hoop in my mind. Mm-hmm. I was on cloud 9. Come by the end of that day, I think Glenn had got 5 for 6, 5 for 7, and made my 5 for look like 5 for 100.
Yeah,
which was but to see him go down, and then, but I think that was a big point. As nearly as big a point, if not, Ryan Harris being off this series, 2015 series.
Yep.
That was a bigger turning point as well. But when Ricky decided that he was going to bowl first on that Edgbaston pitch, I think that was the turning point in the whole series. The 9th over, especially when Shane Warne was having was shaking his head.
Very public display of dissent, wasn't it?
I thought his head was going to fall off at one point. He was shaking it that much, and he was having a go. And then, Marcus Trescothick showed what any good, good world-class player will do in that situation. The odd risk and reward bit, but if that goes straight up in the air and he gets caught, then obviously Australia are, their decision to bowl first goes with them. Marcus Trescothick hit Shane Warne's second ball of the over at the ground, and all of a sudden their head started shaking a bit more. Their heads went down a little bit in the Australian room, and all of a sudden England got the momentum and the ascendancy going forward, and just probably eased Lords out of their mind a little bit.
I mean, it is, of course, famously the closest Ashes Test match ever. We all know that England should have been home and hosed, but Australia put up tremendous resistance. Oh, Steve, you must have given up hope by then.
I wouldn't say giving up hope, but it was dwindling very, very fast.
2 runs, Guy.
It was. We thought we had a chance. Our chance had gone when Simon dropped that catch at third man. We all thought that there was one more chance in the game when you were sort of 30-40 in it. There was still this chance because of you only need 1 wicket. But then when Simon dropped the catch with 15 to go, you're thinking, well, it's an inside edge, it's a poor ball down leg side, or it's a clip through mid-wicket, and all of a sudden they're 1 hit away from being there. And then right at the very end, that big booming full toss to Brett Lee. I knew the man was out there. We wanted every ball possible to sort of get Michael Kasparovich on strike, but Brett Lee, when we got Michael out, and the famous photo of Andrew shaking Brett Lee's hand, and that was justified. That photo goes all around the world, because Brett Lee during that hour and a half, me and Andrew Flintoff hit Brett Lee in so many parts of his body I have never seen. I couldn't believe it. He was like a voodoo doll. He literally got hit everywhere, and he still kept going, and he kept going, and he kept going. So him and Shane Warne were, throughout that series, there were massive players for Australia, but there were the sort of courageousness that they showed in that hour and a half to fight for their country was ridiculous, but it was great to get over the line.
We all know then that Australia, with another rearguard action, saved the 3rd test. England win the 4th test. There's that draw with that kind of weird ending in the 5th test, and an explosion of national joy, Steve, that I don't think I've seen. I was too young to remember what happened after the World Cup in 1966. So an explosion of national joy. What did you make of every politician, every newspaper, every television station, everybody getting in on the act? I mean, it was an incredible aftermath to the reclamation of the Ashes.
I thought it was a joke, to be honest. I thought it was a bit of a farce. If I'm brutally honest, in a way that my local cricket club had 50, 60 kids before that series started. By the time the end of the series, we were looking at 250, 300 kids on a Saturday morning, Friday night, Sunday morning. And I thought, that series captivated the whole country. A lot like when Johnny Wilkinson kicked that ball over the post in Australia in 2003. I thought, the whole country became rugby for that short period. And I think English fans and the working class fans and the people and the man in the street related to us, because we were human beings. We were not robots. We were not rattling out cliches after everything I'd done. I thought we give as good as we, give as good as we got. That bus trip, I do remember being in the dressing room after the after the Test match, England or players, Australia, you wouldn't have known who had. Well, you would have known who had won the series, but there was two sets of players in different parts of dressing rooms, whether it was the English dressing room or the Australian dressing room, really talking about what a great series it was. And we've got a lot in common. We had a long, hard summer, going toe-to-toe with each other. And then we got ushered into a room about sort of 9, 10 o'clock at night. It had been muted that there was going to be a bus trip, and we got told that we were going on a bus trip tomorrow morning.
Yeah, what did you tell me about that bus trip? Tell me first of all, how drunk or sober were you on the bus?
I was, we were ticking. To be honest, Danny, I remember saying in that meeting, what are we doing this for?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe what we're doing it for. I said, well, if we have to go on it, you've got to take us as we are, because I'm not going hard against the best team probably ever to play the game of cricket, win it, and so hard for 7.5 weeks, giving up everything I've given up, and it's not a sacrifice because I want to try and be the best person I possibly can be. But I've now, we've done so many things, and we've had so many sort of ups and downs over the last 7 weeks. I want to celebrate this, and I want to celebrate it in my way and in my fashion. And if they want us to be sort of clean-shaven, suited and booted and bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, they've got to lock us in a hotel room, lock us in a hotel for 2 days and let us get us out of our system and then come back. But they said, no, you've got to go tomorrow. Well, unfortunately, you're going to have to take us as we are. And I think as we are, that appealed to the nation more.
Yeah, but I must say, though, compared to the condition that Andrew Flintoff and Kevin Peterson looked to be in, you did all right, Steve.
Yeah, well, I was a bit more shrewd. To be honest, Danny, well, for me, I think I didn't go to sleep that night.
Good man.
I couldn't. I left the bar at about 20 to 8 in the morning, I think it was. And it was only because I was just nodding off and my trainers went out the window on about third floor bar. And I thought the state Andrew Flintoff was in and the mood he was in, I was probably going to follow. I decided that I was going to go upstairs and get myself ready. It was brilliant. And, there was nobody really went to sleep, I think. I remember going through reception, Marcus Trescothick sitting in reception, just sitting there watching the world go by, and nobody could sleep. It was such a unbelievable atmosphere the way it went on. I didn't leave the hotel. Me and Andrew didn't leave the hotel. Most of the other lads went out for a short drink somewhere, but I wanted to celebrate in the hotel, and I was around friends and family. And then the bus trip, I'd celebrated all night, to be fair. I'd give it everything I'd got all night. I wouldn't say it would be out of my system because I did it for a little bit longer, but I sat on the bus at the back of the bus, out the way a little bit. And I've got 4 children now, but I had 2 children at the time, Emily and Abby, and my wife Haley. We sat on the back of the bus, the 4 of us, and I thought I've celebrated with my teammates all night, all since the game's finished, and sat with them all night. And this is a one-off occasion where we're going to drive through the central London, and there's so many people there. I didn't think there'd be anybody there, and I thought, I'm doing this for my family because they're the ones that have put up with, it's not just for 7 weeks, and my wife will say she's put up with my moods for the last 16 years, but I wanted to celebrate with my family because they had gone through it as well. It wasn't just 12 players that won that Ashes. It was a management team. It was the support staff, and it was every single wife, girlfriend and children that went through the whole thing. And for me, I wanted to celebrate that bus trip with my family because my kids wouldn't, even at the end, we got off the bus in Trafalgar Square. Abby's 2-year-old, and she looked at Dad, what's all these people doing here? And I remember saying to her, look, when you get a bit older, you'll realise what actually happened. And as we get older and we'll get sort of grandparents, and we can talk about this series getting better and better when we're standing in the corner of the bar. You will remember this series getting better and better. But I was privileged to play with a fantastic team against a fantastic team. And like you said before, the margin of the win, we won 2-1 by 2 wickets and 2 runs. It was an amazing summer for England, and I think that transformed the whole country into cricket fans. Absolutely,
Steve, and well said and brilliantly said, if you don't mind me saying, and congratulations on a double there, really. The most famous Test series since Bodyline, perhaps really in the whole modern history of cricket. and the most famous sporting celebration that anyone can remember either. We should talk about your love of Newcastle United, which not only involves watching the team play and supporting the team, but as you hinted at earlier on the show, you've actually been quite involved with the club as well, both playing for the junior teams when you were younger and training with them later on. Tell us about your love of Newcastle United.
Well, Newcastle is they always say, coming up here, there's a goldfish bowl that they do live in, whether it's Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough. It is the Northeast is a tight-knit community where you do tend to support, the club closest to you, and I've always supported Newcastle. Anybody that was half decent as a junior went through the School of Excellence. Very few, a lot chosen. Very few sort of went into the next level. But for me, I love watching Newcastle. First I remember one of my first recollections of being at a game. John Anderson, the famous right fullback for Newcastle, scoring against Millwall and from about 30 yards. John he'll love me for saying this. It was a ridiculous goal that it was like, it looked as though it was just a hit and hope, went straight in the top corner, and I think that was in the sort of early to mid 80s. I do remember one game going and Harry Redknapp's Bournemouth, and the game getting called off at half time because of Foggarts and James in the FA Cup. So that was many moons ago, and then obviously living through the Keegan era and then beyond. But for me, the club, when I was at my not time of need, but I was in a little bit of wilderness when it comes to sort of the mental side and the body side of being a professional sportsman. And there was a certain gentleman that did help me. Paul Winsper, will always be indebted in my career and in my life because of, I met him as a 17-year-old, and he helped me through that back injury in my early career. But he also, spoke to Sir Bobby Robson and got me to be able to come in to train with Newcastle. And there were 5 magical years going in with probably 5 or 6 different managers, but first and foremost, Sir Bobby Robson, when I went into the training for the first time, we went into the gym and he looked at me and he pointed out Alan Shearer, Gary Speed, Shea Given, Steve Harper, James Milner, and he said, if you look at what these do and you see why these lads are true professionals, top performers at both domestic and international football, and you follow them, you'll have a good career in international sport. He did point at a few others and say, if you follow them, and I'll not mention their names, but if you follow them, I'll kick your backside and you'll be out the door as quick as you come in.
Newcastle always had plenty of those, Steve. I wouldn't worry about that.
They had a few, but Sir Bobby was absolutely fantastic.
What is it about Sir Bobby Robson? Everybody, we talked about Nelson Mandela. I'm not making a comparison, but we talked about how once you've been in his presence, nobody ever comes away and says, oh, he's all right. They always seem to be mesmerised by him.
Exactly, mesmerised is the right word. He was an unbelievably infectious person. He was always thinking. I remember it was actually Howard didn't hurt him more than it actually did. And you don't want to laugh. And telling stories from within, I always prided myself on not taking anything out of that change rooms because it was a sanctuary of the 4 walls inside the training ground. And I wanted to prove that I wasn't going to go away and tell tales or anything like that. Right. But there's one afternoon where I was sitting on a bike next to John Carver, and Sir Bobby Robson's watching as he's walking on a treadmill, and the treadmill's right next, because the gym was really tight at that time, and it was right next to a weights machine, which the bench press machine. And Sir Bobby's watching this young game out the window on the outside, and he's walking on the treadmill, and we're just chewing the fat, talking. All of a sudden, Sir Bobby Robson stopped while he's on a treadmill, and obviously the treadmill didn't stop, and he hit the floor, and his head nearly hit the bench press bar, and he just picked himself up, looked at me and John on the bike, and he looked at him and he went, right, I want a word with him after. And somebody in the under-19 game had made a mistake, and Sir Bobby had seen it, and obviously he had just completely stopped, not realising he was on the treadmill. He's hit the floor, and he looked at us, and for the next 15 minutes, myself and John Carver, our lips are
How
bitten
could you
that
stop
much.
yourself from laughing?
You can't laugh at Sir Bobby Robson. And we didn't want to laugh, and we didn't, and we let out this big gasp when he left the room. But that was Sir Bobby all over. He was manager of Newcastle United, former manager of England, and he's watching a youth game out the window, and somebody had done something that he didn't like. in it, and he wanted to help. It
stopped him literally in his tracks.
It did stop him literally in his tracks. But the thing for me, he wanted to help another human being be better in their young career, and that for me, Bobby would have been in his late 60s, 70s at the time. That for me tells every little story about Sir Bobby Robson as a person. He's a fantastic man.
Steve, how do you keep up the passion for Newcastle United? I'm going to say this: a nice sport team who wins one trophy every 10 years these days, but at least they do. How do you keep up the passion for a team that always disappoints?
I'm not the only one. If you look at 52,000 every week, or between 47 and 52,000 every week, that tells you what this black and white shirt means to the area. I don't think the people, they support the club and they support, what goes on, but it's the shirt that people support. And I think it's the club that people support, not who's in charge of the club, who's the manager, or how the team are playing. We got relegated to the Championship, and we had between 39 and 40,000 people every single week. That tells you that the area is passionate about Newcastle, and I've always said that. Love him or hate him, Mike Ashley, whether it's you're on the pro Ashley side or the negative Ashley side, the Newcastle United Football Club's got a strong base, a strong footing. We've spent some money in this window, and at this minute in time, signs were good at the weekend. I thought, there's the odd place where we probably could maybe strengthen a bit more. There's players that have played at the weekend who haven't played a great deal of football. So I'm sure once they start playing a little bit more and the cohesion gets better, then I think we've signed some decent players. So hopefully we can advance up. We should be like every other supporter thinks their team should be in the top 6, top 8. It doesn't happen, but we've got to have a better year than what we've been having, because the last 4 or 5 years I think has really tested the patience of the hardest of Newcastle United fans.
Steve, let me ask you one other question. I don't mean metaphorically. I don't mean I mean physically. Have you ever dreamed of playing in a Newcastle kit?
Oh, I think everybody around the
You've physically had dreams that you're playing for Newcastle, yeah?
Of course you have. Yeah, of course you have. Everybody's had the dream. If you support any team, especially if you're from that area, you've always worn it. You've always had one of the replica shirts at some point in your lifetime, and you've always wanted to be the sort of Alan Shearer because of what Alan Shearer means to Newcastle. Jackie Milburn, what he meant to Newcastle, growing up in the area and wearing that special shirt. Like I said before, there's few there's few given that privilege, and I think sometimes that privilege is a little bit there's a little bit not realizing when that person's in that position. I don't think they realize what it means to the outside world or the outside area of the northeast. I think the ones that do are very, very successful in the northeast.
Steve, I keep calling you England fast bowler, but of course you've had a long career in county cricket, not always playing for the county because of your England commitments, but I know you loved your time at Durham, and it was interesting because when you joined them, they were the team who were finishing bottom of the championship. By the time you leave them, they're winning regular championships.
Yeah, it was when we first joined, and I say we, the people that sort of still there and grew up with and go through, we were the history of Durham County Cricket Club. 1992 was the first team which was built upon
imports.
Yeah, imports. Maybe is a wrong. Is it the right word or wrong word? In sort of has-been sort of thing, where they were finished when they actually came to Durham. Maybe he's being a bit critical on some people there, but I think there were people that were. It was a manufactured, built side, which I'm not sure it worked really. And then once they had sort of gone and fallen by the wayside, we became a very, very young side, and I'm looking at the players that are maybe, or the people that are still there, the likes of myself, Paul Collingwood, Neil Killeen, who were there from very, very young age. We are the sort of history, or we were the history of that club. So to see it transform and evolve throughout that, as well as going off to play for England and coming back, if every chance I possibly could, I wanted to play for my county because I love playing for Durham. It was like playing with my mates. It's like playing club cricket. It was like being, play for England. I'm chosen to go and play and represent with the best in the country. But when I come back to Durham, I actually put more pressure on myself to do well, because I actually wanted my mates to do well. It was so important. I think we got to the semi-final of the Friends Provident, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be fit or not. And I actually played, and I wanted to play because the way I looked at it, and it was not in a selfish way or anything like that. It was, I'm fortunate to play cricket for England at Lord's. Twice, 3 times a year in front of 30,000 people. I want to do my very, very best for my teammates at Durham to maybe get their only time to play at Lord's, and that was something that drove me on.
It was 2007,
2007, and I actually got injured 2 weeks before the actual final, but it did not hamper me one bit on me in that balcony, in that dressing room, because I wanted to see my mates play, who maybe they've been back since, which is great, but at that time it might only been their first and their one and only time to get on that big stage, and I wanted to try my hardest to get them there.
And we can see the development of the club, both in the county championship and in turning out England players, particularly bowlers, and the reward all comes, Steve. 2007, as you say, you win the Friends Provident, and you're second in the championship, and 2008 and 2009 you win and retain the championship. I mean, how big a part of your cricketing career has that played?
Well, I've always said the 2008 County Championship side, that winning feeling of that is the best, arguably the best I've ever felt in sport. For the simple fact is, yes, I won the Ashes. Yes, I got to #1 bowler in the world. Yes, done many things on the internationals team. But when I first played at Durham, me and Paul Collingwood first played for Durham at the Riverside. We got changed in the scoreboard. We were actually getting changed in the scoreboard because the main changing facilities, the main pavilion, wasn't quite built. So the only thing that was built at the time of that ground was the scoreboard. And you see it now, it's a magnificent international stadium, like you alluded to before, the floodlights, what it's had. It's fantastic. So you can see where we've come from with this club. Culminating, and we went into the game at Canterbury knowing that the championship was in Notts' hand. We came on the blind side a little bit, made a fantastic run near the end of the season. I remember the last day. I remember sitting in casualty on the day before, me and the physio sitting in casualty the day before, because I got hit on the wrist. I broke my wrist the day before in the Geraint Jones hit me. I was feeling like gully. And I remember sitting in the dressing room the next morning when the game started, and there was so much tension between the coaches and the lads who weren't playing, because we were on the crest of something. Things weren't going well. We weren't getting wickets, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I had to be on the field. So I gets ready. We go on the field. We win the game. Callum Thorpe got 6 or 7 wickets, I think it was. It was fantastic. I managed to take the last 2 or 3. And we came off the field not knowing, because the game against Notts and Hampshire was still going on. So we get on the bus as potentially runners-up, because Notts are still favourites. And then we get to the Dartford Tunnel knowing that we are going to be champions at some point. And we're going through the Dartford Tunnel. As we go through, we lost signal on the bus, and the ball's gone up in the air. So we go in the Dartford Tunnel as not champions, and we come out the Dartford Tunnel as champions. And from the Dartford Tunnel to the Riverside at Chester Street, if you ever want to have a party, and like Trafalgar Square was on the bus, and it was great. It was a great bus ride. We had 5.5 hours, 6 hours.
Lovely.
And you talk about celebrating with your team. That's the best place ever to celebrate, because you can't go anywhere. There's nowhere really to go. You've got 52 seats on a bus, and you've got 15 lads who have just worked tirelessly for 6 months to win something. They've won it. We've got 5.5 hours to get home, and boy, was that 5.5 hours special. It was fantastic. But I think for winning it, the special thing for me for winning it was there was a lot of stuff going on the year before. We won a trophy. Jeff Cook did magnificent things for Durham Cricket Club. That ground at Chester Street should be named after Jeff Cook once the sponsorship deals stop because of what he's done he nearly gave his life for that club, and that is something that I think has to be recognised, not only for young players but for us, the older ones as well. During that time, such a relaxed atmosphere, but it all of a sudden put us on the market to say, right, we are going to be a force in this country, at Red Bull senior level cricket for time to come, and it's proved that as well.
Absolutely, it has, absolutely. And congratulations on those 2 championship wins. Let's talk about then back in your England career. I want to go straight onto the 06-07 Ashes in Australia.
Do we have to?
No. Well, you're right to say that, but it wouldn't be fair, because there was a remarkable series in between against Pakistan, where in one test you took, let me get this right, 6 for 19 in 13 overs, 11 for 76 in the whole game. And, of course, you watched one of the great farces in international cricket unfold when the 4th test was eventually called off. First, the umpires accused the Pakistanis of ball tampering. Then the Pakistanis said, never mind, we'll play on. But they couldn't get the team and the umpires on the pitch at the same time over a period of a day. And eventually the game fizzled out. But I don't really know whether you got any views on. Let me ask you. All right, ask you a straightforward question. You bowled the ball for speed and bounce. How much do you think there was actual ball tampering in the game of cricket? How much do you think it still goes on?
I think there's a little bit of. What is ball tampering? If somebody gets a hold of the ball and starts ragging it along the concrete floor or off the studs, or uses something
top
on
to
it.
lift the seam, yeah.
That is ball tampering. If you've got somebody that shines the ball a certain way and can make and looks after it and protects it, that's not ball tampering. That's good. That's good use of the ball and making sure it's in the pristine condition to sort of utilize the skills of your bowlers. Mm-hmm. I think there was a bit going on, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
During that time, there was one of our players looking through binoculars at what was happening on the field, and there was a little bit going on. But I don't think it was to that much of extent where it was. I think it was where it was going to be not dangerous for the game, but it was going to be helping one side on the other. I thought it got nipped in the bud very, very quickly by the umpire, who then it became a bit farcical, and it became a little bit of a stubborn battle between an Australian umpire and a nation who when things weren't going right, they dug their heels in Pakistan, whether it was Inzaman or the rest of the players, and it was 2 very, very strong units going hard at each other. And from that point of view, we were never going back on the field because neither one was going to give an inch. Hilarious, I must admit, from an England point. Well, not hilarious, and that's probably the wrong word, but it was
farcical.
It was farcical. Is probably the better word. I do remember on that afternoon. We talk about the Old Trafford Test match before that, but on that afternoon when they said, right, we're going to go back to the hotel, we're going to have a meeting, and we're going to clear this whole thing up. And I thought, well, traffic's going to be bad. I don't fancy driving tomorrow afternoon during rush hour. We're going to make a decision tonight. And I thought, well, I'm just going to sit on the M1 up by Watford and thinking if it calls it off at 10 o'clock, I could be home first by early hours in the morning up in Newcastle.
Right.
And I just thought, I got to Watford and I thought the longer it was going on and there was no judgment, I can keep going. And I remember Richard Bevan, because I was good friends with Richard at the time. I says, Bevo, this is what I've done. Let me know as soon as you can. And he rang me at 10 o'clock. He said, where are you? I said, Scotch Corner. I says, I've gone home. I said, if I have to drive back, I'll drive back. But obviously I have to drive back.
It's a high risk strategy, Steve, because you could be in York and he said, come back. Man.
Yeah, well, then I had a long drive, but I thought I'll back myself, and I didn't for one minute think this battle of wills between 2 stubborn units, as in the ICC, of getting involved, as well as Pakistan. So from that point of view, I thought, well, I'm going to get home in good time here.
Steve, I have to say, that was the longest speech I've ever heard about to answer one question, and also try and avoid answering the next question.
Yeah.
England, after the magnificence of 2005, England go down to Australia for the 2006-2007 Ashes series. I've written 5 words for the whole of this series. I've written that ball and Oz win 5-0. That's my entire notes. England lost 5-0. They were humiliated, battered out of sight. I mean, it was an extraordinary turnaround. And it all started, Steve, with that ball which you bowled a second slip.
Yeah, I'll come on to that ball in a minute, because I've got,
You've got a theory, have you?
No, I didn't have a theory. I can tell a story about it. But
good. the series.
The series itself, we were beaten by the better team, obviously. We were in that series on nearly every test match apart from Brisbane. If you think we went to Adelaide and got 550, first innings batting first, you should not get beat from that position. We were in Perth and bowled them out for 200, and if you do that first up, you should be well in the game. We had them in Melbourne. We had them 150 for 5. When Andy Simons came in and got runs, got 150. And then in Sydney, we had a little sniff in that game. Not much of a one, but a little sniff in that game. And we got beat there. We lost 5-0. It wasn't because that ball went to first slip, first ball. It wasn't because Andrew Flintoff was captain and not Andrew Strauss. The simple fact is, we weren't good enough. So when it comes down to that first ball and talk about it, and the story I had, there's some, I tell it in the sort of after dinner type.
Yeah.
And it's in a way, which is there's a fun element and a serious element, and the serious is seriously serious, and it's got nothing to do with cricket. And the fun one is, I always sort of visualize what I was trying to do, and everybody was talking about. And that ball was supposed to be full. I was supposed to be really full, trying to sort of bring Justin Langer forward, because everybody was talking about how aggressive we were at 2005 and trying to, set a marker and really sort of be aggressive to them. And I'd always say the fun element was I tried to sort of pitch it up. The ideal world, when you visualize it, you pitch it up, he nicks it, it goes to slip, and you got a wicket first ball. Well, I was 95% of it spot on.
Yeah, you
just missed the middle bit out, but
obviously it's the most discussed ball since Warne's ball to Mike Gatting.
Yeah.
Did any of your England teammates laugh?
Carrying on with that, you look at Matthew Hoggard. If you'd seen Matthew Hoggard's running in from fine leg with his hands in the air, jumping and screaming.
He thinks it's a catch, does he?
Well, he's in his after dinner. He's got to second slip and nobody's nicked it, and it must be out. Andrew Flintoff catches it, throws it to Gully, and instinctively just shouts, claps his hands and shouts, "Well bowled, Harmy," just to sort of, because that was instinct and naturally the thing to do, and it was thrown back. That's all the sort of joking side and the fun side of it, and this is what it happened. I don't dismiss it. I don't not like talking about it, because it is what it is.
It's the microscope of international sport. If you'd have bowled that ball, third ball of the over, no one would have ever thought about it again. Listen,
well,
thank you.
Mitchell Johnson, and I want to carry the story on, because this is serious, this part of it, and what it puts sport in perspective. And Mitchell Johnson bowled one in this summer, and it was in the middle of the series, and nobody's really spoke about it. But this is why I want to carry this on, and I always tell this, and I'll never forget that, and nobody ever forgets it. But this is where it gets serious, because people always ask me, did it affect you? And I would say it affected me for about 6.5 hours. And really, why it affected me for 6.5 hours? I mentioned my children, and we went back at the night time, and I went back and walked through the hotel room door, and the kids aren't bothered whether dad's just bowled the first ball at the second slip or he's getting 5 for dad's back, and we're going to do some crayons, or we're going to go swimming or whatever. And I remember at the night time, right after that, time to go to bed, and I'm lying on top of the bed watching the TV, and I'm thinking, well, it's probably not a good idea to watch Australian TV, because I'm going to see it again. Mm-hmm. So I'll watch English, I watch Sky News, and I watched Sky News on that day, on that very night. And the reason why it didn't affect me after that is because it alarmed me. I watched the opening part of the show, and there it is, Ashes 2006, Steve Harmison, that ball. And I thought, right, fair enough. Mustn't be anything else going on in the world at the time. And then this is where it does not affect me anymore, because the next clip on the new reel was it was one of the first 2 soldiers of Afghanistan was killed on that very day, and that was after the first ball, and that put life in perspective for me. I cuddled my children all night that night. Could not stop thinking about two people fighting for the country, and I've getting headline news when 2 people have died fighting for their country. I thought it was a joke. And I thought, when it put life into perspective, it put cricket in perspective, and it put sport into perspective for me. And I think that's why I like telling that story in a fun way, but also in a serious element, because this is a game. and it's not life or death. And unfortunately, that moment there really inside really hurt me. And I went on, and I thought I showed my character throughout that series, because you're right, 25 days. On the first day, it was a poor day, and I had to play for the next 24 days in front of all them thousands of people in them grounds. And I tried my best for England. It wasn't good enough. We got beat 5-0, but at least I tried to keep fronting up. I didn't try and hide. I didn't run away, and I didn't want to be anything other than the best person Stephen Harmison could be for English cricket, and it wasn't good enough. But that newsreel really hit home for me, and that's the serious part of that whole story.
Steve, we talked about the disastrous Ashes and that ball and all the rest of it. We talked about it at length, and we're going to come on in this section to the redemption that you got in the 2009 Ashes series. Before that, though, I think it would be unfair, after all we've talked about, in between those two things, it would be unfair to leave out the fact that you played against South Africa in 2008. Never mind about the bowling and all the rest of it, but in one innings you made 49 not out, your highest score, and a pretty good score for somebody coming in, I suppose, at 11. Did you enjoy batting, Steve?
Yeah, I love batting. Yeah, I always worked the theory that I was there for a good time and not for a long one. And I had the sort of theory that if fast bowlers were either going to bowl at your feet or your head, and you try and score off one and try and defend the other. There was a few times against a few fast bowlers, Akhtar, Lee.
Shoaib Akhtar, for God's sake.
The bowling at the trying to score off the head bit was never ever an option. So you try to hit the full ball. But now that day against Pakistan, Pakistan against South Africa, it was a great test match for me. Kevin Peterson, got the captaincy. He reinstated me, brought me back into the team, managed to talk me out of playing one-day cricket again, which, on hindsight, probably wasn't the best thing for me. It wasn't a great idea for me to do, but you live and learn. And on that day against South Africa, I felt as though I bowled really well, but then the batting was quite a fun element. I scored a few runs, and then, as tail enders do when they get together, it was a bit of a farcical end. I blocked the ball into the covers on 49 at the Oval, thinking just a nice easy one, and I've put it between two fielders and decided that I was going to set off for a run, and look down the other end and realised Monty was bat up his backside and not really paying attention. He was probably wondering what was on the Emirates flight coming over. It's 4:00 in the afternoon, thinking he would love to be on it. So we ended up having to go back, and then the next ball, I hit the ball straight to A.B. de Villiers, who not only is A.B. one of the best batsmen in the world, best wicketkeepers in the world, he's probably up there in the top 3 world fielders in the world.
Isn't he?
Yeah, it is annoying, but fantastic to watch everything he does. And Monty decides he's going to run, so I thought I had to sort of go for it, and I think AB threw the stumps down as me and Monty went past each other in the middle of the wicket. So not to be for 50, but 49 was the highest score, and I really did enjoy batting. I loved the challenge of whether it was facing Warne or Muralitharan to back up your partner at the other end. I loved the challenge when somebody was going well and scoring runs. There's 2 or 3 times I remember playing again at the Oval against South Africa, and Andrew Flintoff was at the other end, and I think there was one game at Lords where me and Andrew put 103 on, and I got 1. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. What better place to watch one of your big striking cricketers from 22 yards away just completely take apart the opposition bowling attack. So I did love batting, I must admit. Steve,
well, thank you for that, and I've got one more batting record to talk about, and you know what I'm going to say next as well.
Yeah.
But your story and the way things happened in 2005 and that ball, it seems like it's like something out of a boy. I wouldn't say a fairy tale, but it's like out of a boy's adventure book, and it comes to this amazing climax in 2009. You're not in the England team for the first 3 tests of the Ashes series against Australia. Andrew Flintoff gets injured, and you come back for the last 2 tests, and it is incredible, given everything else has gone before you, that you achieve 2 things. I'll do the minor one in just a second, but you win the final test. You are the person who takes out the last 3, 9-10 jack of Australia's innings and win it. I mean, it's an amazing story. I should make the point, though, that during the 4th test, where you came in to replace Andrew Flintoff, you joined a very elite club of one great batsman, Mike Atherton, and one poor batsman, Monty Panesar, with a 20... Do you have to be your 20th Test duck, an English record. Well done, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
But you weren't there to be batting. You were there to bowl, weren't you?
Exactly.
Talk to me about that final Test where, with the series in the balance, you take out the last 3 Australians, and you could have, Steve, I mean, you already got an amazing enough life. You could have ended the Ashes on a hat-trick.
Yeah, that would have been an unbelievable, like you say, the 2005, 2006, 7, and if I'd finished with a hat-trick. It was to be my last Test. I probably knew before going into that, I probably knew it was going to be my last Test. I wasn't somebody, I'd already retired from one-day cricket. So I'd retired and come back out of retirement. I didn't see the point of retiring. When I finished, I'm looking after the series. I had a good chat with Andy Flower. So I had an idea going into this Test. It was probably going to be my last Test. I couldn't do 10 months of the year consistently playing. So I wanted this to be a special occasion, special moment. I didn't bowl much in the first innings, but then in the second innings, I was desperate for that game to finish on that night. And when Andrew Strauss probably wasn't as confident throwing me the ball as he probably had been in years gone by, but I think he realised that one last time, give it a real good go, everything you've got, and we managed to get the sort of 3 wickets. Wow. Stuart Broad was fantastic the day before, but he was just young, and I think all the energy he had put into it, his legs were flagging a little bit. Swanee was bowling really well with Jimmy, and I managed to pick up a few wickets near the end, and to finish the series with a win, to finish the Ashes with a win. I probably knew walking around the ground, and that's why I probably did that lap of honour a little bit more for the sake that my best mate was finishing as well, that I wanted to sort of soak up the atmosphere, because I probably had an idea that I wasn't going to play it anymore after that. It was fantastic.
Well, listen, we all know what happened. You took the wicket of Peter Siddle and Stuart Clark with consecutive deliveries, both caught after attempting to play on the leg side. You had a unique opportunity. Ben Hilfenhaus came in, stopped the hat-trick, but then you took him out as well to win the match, to win the Ashes, and to end on a super high note, a wonderful Test career. Incredible, Steve. And in a funny way, your career, if you think about, that ball and the 5-0 Trossaching that you got out in Australia, but the other things that have happened to you, I can't think of many more senior professional international cricketers who've had a more up and down time. Really, really low points where the team wasn't doing well, but also some fantastic things. And that ending with the 3 wickets to take out Australia, it's just typical of the way it went for you.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And you're spot on when it comes to the way the career was, up and down. And I work a lot with the PCA now, and I work a lot with some young cricketers in the game and the professionals in the game. And like I say to them, and especially to the PCA, there's not much I've not done in this game. And that's not a big-headed thing, because I look at, I've had the utmost highs, but I've also been through the downright lows, in not just in the cricketing terms, but from a personal life when it comes to sort of the mental side of the game, and suffering from depression and things like that from a young age, and going through the homesickness and going through the trials and tribulations of touring, and everywhere in the world that you've been to, the good times and the bad times, and we've been through the sort of terrorist attacks that we were in India. I feel as though I can give a hell of a lot back to people that, if they do want advice, I've always been there. I said to the PCA, I've always been there on the end of a phone to say, if anybody is struggling, I will always try and help people, because the one thing I will always try to do in my commentating side of it, whether I'm working on the radio or working on TV, is to try and see the other side. It's easy to be critical and say that was poor, that wasn't very good, and why that wasn't very good. But I'm very, very tough to be critical with too many people, for the simple fact is I know how tough this game is, whether it's at domestic or the international level. It's a tough game we play.
Steve, you mentioned there the fact that you were diagnosed with depression very early in your life, and of course some of this reflected in the anxiety about being away from home. How much has it affected your career and your life, the mental health issues that you've had?
The cricket was a release. the fortunate part of it, and a lot of people will talk about the homesickness thing, and I used to love it when they said it was the homesickness thing, and I'll go back to somebody like Jonathan Trott, Marcus Trescothick, Michael Yardy, and people like that. Mm-hmm. I had a little bit of a barrier of the homesickness to fall back on, because people used to think, well, if he's having a bad day, it's just homesickness.
Sure,
I'm fine with that.
It was a shield, wasn't it?
It was. For the simple fact is, you mentioned depression, you're finished. You mentioned depression, you leave a tour, you're having a bad time, and the word depression's mentioned instead of homesick, and you don't carry on.
Well, we saw what happened with Jonathan Trott, didn't we?
Exactly.
And you'd have thought after Marcus's book that we'd have a more enlightened view of this stuff now, but I'm not sure we've moved on a great deal, actually.
I don't think we have. I think you're spot on. I don't think we have moved on a great deal. I think the PCA do great things. Jason Ratcliffe, at the Players Cricket Association, he is, for me, he's sport leader in what he does to help mental health issues in cricket especially, and what they do is first class. But for me, that homesickness shield, like you say, was there, but my release was getting on the field. I could feel terrible going into a game. There was one or two times I had a bad tour in South Africa in 2004-05, and I remember I was like hyperventilating in Joburg. I couldn't get the air in because I was struggling with anxiety and stuff like that. But going on the field just released me from anything, because once I was concentrating on my job and concentrating on trying to be the best I possibly can be, because I was quite strong-willed mentally, that I wanted to be there. I didn't want to give up. I've never really given up on anything too much in my career. I always felt as though if there was a brick wall coming in front of me, I tried to go through it rather than duck round it. But that was something that the homesickness element of it, when people were accusing me of that, did help me, because if I mentioned the mental health issues or depression issues or anxiety issues, I think as soon as you mention that and you have a bad game, I'm afraid your days in international sport's gone.
I exactly hear what you're saying, Steve, but that can't be right, can it?
It can't be right. No, it can't be right. People have got to be there to be helped. People have got to be there to be honest and open. And there is ways and means. And I do remember. I don't think I'm talking ill of this when Marcus was struggling, because I spent a bit of time with Marcus during that series of Australia. After he got home in India, he came back in, then went to Australia. And I remember sitting in Sydney and people were talking about getting his wife and his family to come over early. And it was like, once it's got you, it's got you. And Marcus is struggling. I don't think, no matter what if Haley comes across and the kids come across, being out there in the heat of the battle, if it's affecting that, his wife and kids aren't going to help him, and it's just going to make him worse. And when it makes you worse, then you've got other things that come into it. Mental health is a strange fruit when it comes to if it escalates. There's your life becomes an issue. And like I mentioned with the wide ball and talking about the soldiers and things like that, we're not playing life, and it is serious sport. But when your life comes into it, and the mental health is far wears out anything that you can do with a battle ball.
Steve, of course, since you retired from the game, you've been in the media, on radio and television, talking about cricket. But now you've got another job, and well, you were as good as your word. You said football was your first love, and following in the footsteps, I think, of your father, you've become manager of Ashington AFC in the 9th tier of English football. So I think this is the highest level virtually, where you've still got amateur players, but it's a very serious level of the sport. How did this come about?
Well, it came about because timing is everything. February of last year, the manager who'd done a fantastic job before at Ashington, he resigned, he gave up, and Ashington wanted something different, something new. I've always been around non-league football. Anybody that knows me, this is not a surprise. Anybody that thought it was a publicity stunt, I didn't really care too much what anybody said on that front. It was something that I really when I decided I was going to do it, was something I was going to do it and enjoy, and I have done so far, even though the first 2 games of the season haven't gone well for us. But these things happen, and you sort of learn by little things that are going. I've enjoyed it 100%, and I want to keep doing it, and I've got some good people around me, and it's a fantastic place to be in the northeast, because non-league football north of Leeds, other than maybe 6 clubs, has probably cut adrift from the rest of the country, and that's a shame because there's some fantastic players and fantastic clubs in this northeast area, and it shows with this, the FA Cup runs that other teams have had and the FA Vars runs that teams have had in the last 10 years. That it's a thriving area.
I mean, I know you had some pretty high-level advice building up to taking over at Ashington. Hasn't John Carver been giving you some advice?
Well, I've known John since I was 10-year-old. I was at School of Excellence, and John was there. That was the first time I came across him. We talked about Sir Bobby Robson beforehand and what a great man Sir Bobby is. And I mentioned John's name. John was Sir Bobby's assistant manager, and John was more or less there till the very sort of end of Sir Bobby's lifetime. And John was Newcastle manager last year. I spoke to John quite a bit. And he's a great man, one of the best coaches there is going around. And he was a bit unlucky at the way things happened for him at Newcastle. And I felt heartily sorry for him because he was in a no-win situation. But it's something I've really enjoyed doing. I've always enjoyed being a senior figure in a dressing room, and I've had to be at Durham. And I was at the latter part of the England setup, where when you're a senior player in a dressing room, you are like a manager, you are like a captain, because you have to manage yourself first and foremost. But you've also got to help young people when they come into the team. Make sure that they're comfortable in the surroundings. They feel comfortable to express themselves, and you're not like a. When I first went into the England cricket team, there was a lot of senior players. There was like a selfishness mentality, and I thought that had to change when it come to playing the side. When I first got into the playing team and then became a senior player and made it comfortable for anybody to come in. Now that's where I try and be that way in the management side. It's making young players come in, or players that have been there for a while, give them freedom through expression, comfortable that they can make mistakes, but also having a structure and a way that helps us go forward and win football games.
In view of some of the discussion we had about the ups and downs you've had, not in this sport, as you say, you put those into perspective, but in your own mind, with some of the issues you've had, are you happy, and what do you hope for going forward that will continue to make you happy?
I'm happy. I've got 4 wonderful children. I've been married for nearly 17 years now, and I feel as though I'm happy in my life. I have mental problems. I had mental problems that were largely contributed with cricket. So since I stopped playing cricket, they subsided a little bit. I don't think they'll ever go away, but I will still fight me demons, as the saying goes. My wife thinks I've got a few more than I should have. But I love life. I love doing what I'm doing. The work I do with the PCA, and the little commentary games, and the radio stuff I do. Being in cricket is still. Last year I applied to be a selector for England. It wasn't meant to be. They chose Angus Fraser, and I thought that was a fantastic selection because he's been everything in the game. I would love to help English cricket in some way, shape, or form, because like we've talked about in the Times, I've got a lot of experience of everything that's good and bad about the game, and I want to help people. That's the only reason. That's what drives me on at this moment in time. If there's somebody out there that needs help, I will help them in any way, shape, or form. They just have to pick the phone up, and that for me will drive me through the next part of my career and my life, and hopefully it'll be a good one, because like I say, I've got a lot to look forward to, and the challenge now is for me, because I'm not saying I wasn't before this, but the challenge for me is trying to be the best father I possibly can be to my kids, because before that, during my professional days, I wasn't always there for my kids, so hopefully I can be.